Daf Yomi for September 16th, Tuesday, September 16th, 2025, which is the third day of the week, the 23rd day of Elul 5785, Parshat Netzavim, and we start a new order, a new tractate, a new order. We've been in the order of Nezikin for just about 2 years, maybe a couple months shy of it. We started in November of 23. We started Bava Kama, and we've been in that order until yesterday. With the completion of Horayot yesterday, we finished that order, and now we enter the new order of Kudshim that deals with the sacrifices, and the tractate of Zevachim, which is today, which means sacrifices, or Zevach means to slaughterings or sacrifices, offerings. And something matched up today on a work that I've had, a mathematical work I've been working on for many years. It's called the PL89 Gematriatic Quantum Thought Calendar. And actually, the rectangle that represents today, the box number is 2, and that represents the second Daf Bet, because a tractate of Talmud always starts on Daf Bet. You would think the first page would start on page number 1, but the Talmud has a special feature about it that it's, and for several reasons, a few of which maybe I'll explain now. If you learn a tractate and then you come to the end of it, you realize you didn't even get to page 1. I like that. I like that reason. But also, the Torah starts with the letter Bet. There's another reason that I haven't heard people say, but I kind of realized it myself. It's kind of like it describes the concept of Elu ve'elu, Divrei Elokim Chaim, that this side and this side are both, like when there's ever a machloket, an argument, disagreement in the Talmud between Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai, or between any two rabbis in the Talmud or in the Mishnah, there's a disagreement. So it's said that both of them are the words of the living God. Elu ve'elu, Divrei Elokim Chaim. Both words, So basically, if you get into agreement, you say Rosh Hashanah has 35 daf, and then someone says no, it's not true. It has only 34 daf. Then, in a sense, they would both be right, because it has literally, actually, 34 daf, because it starts at daf bet, but the last page number is 35. So in a way, it's kind of like it brings humility. By the way, when I said 35, it passed 34 and then 35 seconds, 3 minutes and 35 seconds. It's kind of like the idea of the PL89 is to do the quantum where everything matches. But anyway, besides the point. Right, so someone says, how many daf is Rosh Hashanah? 34, 35. It goes up to page number 35, but there's actually only 34 pages. And then it kind of like allows you to be flexible a little bit, and it also gives a little bit of weight to the idea of kololim in gematria, that something can be off by 1. And I used to think that was just cheating. You can't be off by 1. But recently I've had a newfound appreciation for kololim, and because of this reason, it's like it's in a way it's that, no, it's not. It's kind of like the whole attitude of the Gemara in general. It's like, let's see what it is. It's like, in a way it's this way, and it's not that way. Let's analyze it. Anyway, on the PL89 calendar, the rectangle number was 2, and it also coincides with the second event, which is also today. And so all that is just an akdama, just an introduction for this new tractate of Zevachim. Let's get started with the Mishnah. Kol ha-Zevachim shenizbechu shelo lishman kesherim. The Mishnah says, all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their own sake, meaning during the slaughtering, the slaughtherer's intent was to sacrifice a different offering. They're fit, meaning that one may continue their sacrificial rites and partake of their meat, where that applies. They're kosher, meaning it's kosher food, I suppose. Ela shelo alu lebalim l'shem chova chutz min hapesach ve'achatat. So they're kosher, but these offerings did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, who is therefore required to bring another offering. This is the halacha with regard to all offerings except for the paschal offering and the sin offering. In those cases, if the owners sacrifice them not for their own sake, they are unfit. But there is a difference between the two exceptions. The paschal offering is unfit only when sacrificed not for its own sake at its appointed time, on the 14th day of Nisan afternoon, while the sin offering is unfit any time that it is sacrificed not for its own sake. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, אף האשם הפסח בזמנו, והחטאת והאשם בכל זמן. אמר רבי אליעזר, החטאת באה על חטא, והאשם באה על חטא. מה חטאת פסולה שלא לשמה, אף האשם פסול שלא לשמה. Rabbi Eliezer says the guilt offering too is unfit when sacrificed not for its own sake. According to his opinion, the correct reading of the Mishnah is, the paschal offering is unfit only at its appointed time, while the sin offering and the guilt offering are unfit at all times. Rabbi Eliezer said in explanation, the sin offering is brought for performance of a transgression, and the guilt offering is brought for performance of transgression, just as a sin offering is unfit when sacrificed not for its own sake. So too, the guilt offering is unfit when sacrificed not for its own sake. Rabbi Yossi ben Choni Omer, Hanishchatim l'shem Pesach, u'l'shem chatat pesulin. Rabbi Yossi ben Choni says, not only are the paschal offering and the sin offering unfit when slaughtered not for their own sake, but also other offerings that are slaughtered for the sake of a paschal offering and for the sake of a sin offering are unfit. Shimon Achi Azariah Omer, Shachatan l'shem gavoa mehen kesherin, shem namoch mehen pesulin. Shimon, brother of Azariah, says that this is the distinction with regard to all offerings. With regard to all offerings, if one slaughtered them for the sake of an offering whose level of sanctity is greater than theirs, they're unfit. If one slaughtered them for the sake of an offering whose level of sanctity is less than theirs, they are unfit. Ketzad? How so? Kadshe kadashim, shishach l'shem kadshim kalim, pesulin. Kodshim kalim shishachim l'shem kodshe kadashim kesherim. Abechor v'hamaaser shishachatan l'shem shlamim kesherim. Shlamim shishachatan l'shem bechor v'l'shem maaser pesulin. Offerings of the most sacred order, for example, sin offerings and burnt offerings, that one slaughtered for the sake of offerings of lesser sanctity, for example, peace offerings, are unfit. Offerings of lesser sanctity that one offered that one slaughtered for the sake of offerings of the most sacred are fit. Likewise, there is a distinction between different offerings of lesser sanctity. The firstborn animal and the animal tithe that one slaughtered for the sake of a peace offering are fit, as the sanctity of peace offerings is greater. As the sanctity of peace offerings is greater, peace offerings than one slaughtered for the sake of a firstborn animal or for the sake of an animal tithe are unfit. Okay, that's the Mishnah, and now we start the Talmud, the Gemara. The Gemara teaches that all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their own sake are fit, but they do not satisfy the obligation of the owner. The Gemara asks, Lama li lemisna ela shelo alu lisnei velo alu libali mishim chuva. The Gemara asks, why do I need the Mishnah to teach this halacha using the language, but they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner? Let it teach simply, and they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner. Why does the word Ella add? They're asking just the word Ella. It should say they're kosher and they did not. Well, Ella means however. They're asking why did they put the word Ella. I wouldn't even think to ask that, but they're saying why they feel that that's not necessary. Okay? That's what they're asking. Why does it include the word Ella? The Gemara responds by adding this word. The Mishnah teaches us that the only deficiency with regard to these offerings is that they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, but they retain their sanctity, and it is still prohibited to deviate from the protocol of their sacrificial process, meaning the remaining rites must be performed with proper intent. And this halacha is in accordance with the statement of Rava, as Rava says with regard to a burnt offering that one slaughtered not for its own sake, it is still prohibited to sprinkle its blood on the altar, not for its sake. Okay. The Gemara adds, if you wish, propose a logical argument to support this statement, and if you wish, cite a verse as proof. The Gemara elaborates, if you wish, propose a logical argument just because one deviated from protocol in its sacrifice once, meaning in its slaughter, could it be said that he should continue to deviate from protocol in all the rest of the sacrificial rites? One deviation does not justify additional deviations. Ibait emakra motza sifatecha tishmor ve'asita kasher nedarta l'Hashem Elokecha nidava. And if you wish, cite a verse, that which has gone out of your lips you shall observe and do, according to what you have vowed freely to the Lord your God, even that which you have promised with your mouth. Deuteronomy 23:24. The Gemara interprets the words nidarta and nidava exegetically. Can this verse be referring to a gift offering? And now we turn to page 2b. 2b on page 2b. Top of the page, nederhu. Nederhu ela im kamash nedarta sita. Yehe neder v'imlo nidava yehe. It is already referred to as a vow, offering, a neder. Rather, the verse indicates that if you did what you vowed to do, meaning you sacrificed your vow offering properly, it shall be a satisfactory vow offering. And if you did not sacrifice it properly, it shall be rendered a voluntary gift offering unrelated to the vow, and shall not satisfy the obligation of your vow. ונדבה משרת לשנוי בה. The Gemara concludes as, and it is permitted to deviate from protocol in the sacrifice of a gift offering ab initio. Certainly it is not. Evidently, even if one of the sacrificial rites is performed for the sake of sacrificing a different offering, it is still prohibited to perform any of the other sacrificial rites in the correct manner. Amar le Rabbi Papa lo havet gaban be'urta b'techuma becharmach dira mirava mile me'aliyata ahadadi dishani lehu. Ravina said to Rav Papa, since you were not with us last night within the Shabbat limit of Be'harmach, you did not hear that Rava raises a contradiction between two superior Mishnaic statements and teaches their resolution. Ma mili me'aliyata. Tanan kol Zevachim shnizbechu shelo lishman kulei tama deshelo lishman hastama aluna milabalim b'shem chova al mastama namikle ki lishman dame. What are these superior statements? We learned in the Mishnah, all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their sake are fit, but they did not satisfy the obligation of the owner. Rava infers the reason they do not satisfy the obligation of the owner is specifically that they were slaughtered not for their own sake. But if offerings were slaughtered without specification of intent, they as well satisfy the obligation of the owner. Apparently, if one performs any action without specification of intent, it is also considered as if he performed it expressly for its sake. Uremini kol haget shenichtav shelo l'shem isha pasul ustam namipazu. And Rava raised a contradiction from another Mishnah, Gittin 24a. Any bill of divorce that was written not for the sake of the woman in question is not valid, and it is derived from the continuation of that Mishnah that if a bill of divorce is written without specification as to which woman is referring, it is also not valid. Vishani Zevachim bistam ishman omdin isha bistam alav l'gerushin omedet. And Rava resolves the contradiction. Ordinarily, an ordinary slaughtered offerings stand designated for their own sake from the time that the offering is consecrated. It's presumed and is that it will be slaughtered for the type of offering for which it was consecrated. Therefore, even if the one slaughtering it has no particular intention, it is in effect considered slaughtered for its own sake. By contrast, an ordinary wife does not stand designated for divorce. Therefore, a bill of divorce is never presumed to be referring to a given woman unless it is specified explicitly. Zevachim b'stama kesherin minala ilem mehaditnan kol hazevachim shenizbechu shelo lishman kule v'lo kitani shelo nizbechu lishman gabe get nami ha katane kol haget shenichtav shelo l'shem isha pasul v'lo katani shelo nichtav l'shem isha pasul. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that slaughtered offerings are fit and even satisfy the obligation of the owner if slaughtered without specification? If we say it is from that which we learned in the Mishnah, all slaughtered offerings that were slaughtered not for their own sake are fit, but these offerings did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, and it does not teach this using the language, all slaughtered offerings that were not slaughtered for their sake are fit, but these offerings did not satisfy the obligation of the owner, this cannot be. One cannot infer from this language that slaughter without specification is valid, since the Mishnah also teaches with regard to a bill of divorce, and a bill of divorce that was written not for the sake of the woman is not valid, and it does not teach that was not written for the sake of the woman is not valid, and it is a given that a bill of divorce written without specification is not valid. Ela yaditnan ketadishman v'shelo lishman l'shem ha'pesach u'l'shem shlamim ta'ama diamad l'shem pesach u'l'shem shlamim ha l'shem pesach ustama kasher al nustaman kilishman dami. Rather, perhaps it is derived from that which we learned in the Mishnah 13a, how are offering slaughter for the sake and not for their own sake. For example, one might slaughter the paschal offering for the sake of a paschal offering and then for the sake of a peace offering. The Gemara infers the reason such an offering is unfit is that he says that he is slaughtering it for the sake of a paschal offering, and then he says that he is slaughtering it for the sake of a peace offering. But if he says that he is slaughtering it for the sake of a paschal offering and then slaughters it without specification, it is fit. Apparently, slaughtering an offering without specification is considered as if one slaughtered it for its own sake. Dilma shaniyatam diamar koloisem daseshenoisi. The Gemara responds, perhaps there is different. As the Mishnah is saying that anyone who performs an action performs it with his original intent in mind. Therefore, since he specified initially that he was slaughtering the offering for the sake of a paschal offering, there are no grounds to assume that he changed his mind. Here, by contrast, he pronounced no initial statement of proper intent. Okay? And we say, "V'shelo lishman lishman l'shem shlamim u'l'shem pesach tamad demar l'shem shlamim u'l'shem pesach astama u'l'shem pesach kasher." Rather, perhaps this halach is derived from the latter clause of that Mishnah. How are offerings slaughtered not for their sake and then for their sake? For example, one might slaughter the paschal offering for the sake of a peace offering and then for the sake of a paschal offering. The Gemara infers the reason it is unfit is that he says he is slaughtering it for the sake of a peace offering, and then he says he is slaughtering it for the sake of a paschal offering. But if he started slaughtering it without specification and then slaughtered it for the sake of a paschal offering, it is fit. Apparently, if one slaughters an offering without specification, it still satisfies the obligation of the owner. Dilma shani hatam yochiach sofer. The Gemara responds, perhaps there it is different, as the Mishnah is saying that his ultimate intent proves the nature of his original intent. Since his ultimate intent was to sacrifice a paschal offering, that was presumably his original intent as well. Here, by contrast, there is no ultimate expression of proper intent. Alternatively, it can be explained that even if one's ultimate intent is not considered proof of his original intent, the Mishnah still uses the same term in both clauses to preserve symmetry. Since in the former clause, the Tana taught using the language for their sake and then not for their sake, teaching that original intent is considered proof of ultimate intent. The Tana also taught the second clause using the language not for their sake and then for their sake. In any event, there is no proof from that Mishnah that an offering slaughtered without specification satisfies its owner's obligation. L'shem shishet dvarim azevach nizbach l'shem zevach l'shem zoveach l'shem shem l'shem ishim l'shem reach l'shem nichoach ve'achatat ve'asham l'shem chet. Rather, perhaps this halacha is derived from that Mishnah 46b, which states, the offering is slaughtered for the sake of 6 matters: for the sake of the particular offering, for the sake of the one sacrificing the offering, being the owner, for the sake of God, for the sake of consumption by the fires of the altar, for the sake of sacrificing it in a manner that gives an aroma, and for the sake of pleasing God. Okay? And the sin offering and the guilt offering are slaughtered for the sake of atonement for the sin. Rabbi Yossi, Af mi shelo היה בליבו לשם אחד מכל אלו, כאשר תנאי בית דין הוא, התנו בית דין, דלא למר לשמו, תלמד תלמר שלא לשמו. The Mishnah on 46b continues. Rabbi Yossi said, even in the case of one who did not have in mind to slaughter the offering for the sake of any of these, the offering is, since this is a stipulation of the court, the Gemara explained Rabbi Yossi's opinion. The court stipulated that one should not say that he is slaughtering the offering for the sake, lest he come to say that he is slaughtering it not for its sake. Therefore, one should not specify his intent at all. The Gemara infers, and if it enters your mind, that if one slaughters an offering without specification, it is unfit. Would the court arise and stipulate a matter that disqualifies the offering? Clearly, an offering slaughtered without specification is fit and satisfies the obligation of the owner. The Gemara asks, and with regard to bill of divorce, from where do we derive that if it is written without specification as to which woman is referring, it is not valid? If we say it is inferred from that which we learned in the Mishnah Gittin 24a, in the case of a man who was passing through the marketplace and he heard scribes who write bills of divorce dictating to their students, the man so-and-so divorces so-and-so from the place of such and such, and the man said, that is my name. This is my name and the name of my wife. He desires to use this bill for his divorce. This bill is unfit to divorce his wife with. That is not proof. Dilma k'derapapa, it can be explained, perhaps the Mishnah is according to the explanation of Rav Papa. As Rav Papa says, here we are dealing with scribes who are wont to practice writing bills of divorce. And this bill of divorce is a draft and was not written for the sake of severance, meaning divorce, at all. But if a bill of divorce is written to be used for divorce, perhaps it is fit even written without specifying the woman in question. Elameha, rather derive this halacha from the subsequent clause in that Mishnah. This concludes the first daf of Zevachim.